What I really want to do is to be able to change the lives of a group of people with the same material that they deal with every day.
Alô, galera!
Mas olha só, Vic, né, Vic? Isso não é futuro.
Então aqui nesse lixo aqui eu invento muita coisa. E eu também me sinto muito bem aqui nessa água, nesse lixo.
Sou Vicky, prazer.
Eu queria fazer a entrada dos catadores e o dinheiro todo da venda das fotografias iria reverter para fazer alguma coisa mudar aqui.
Muito bom. Pensando assim, o que você vai fazer na hora que você sair daqui do Jardim Gramacho?
Caraca, maluco. Nunca imaginei uma obra de arte.
Lot number 272, the great work by Vic Muniz, Pictures of Garbage. Well done.
That's a very inspirational documentary. I highly recommend watching the entire thing. It is able to take trash, something so dirty, and turn it into something completely the opposite, and at the same time transform the lives of people. Today we're talking about E.8.1, and we're going to outline and compare the various methods for waste disposal. So in this context, we're talking about waste, something that's coming essentially from a human activity, and we're going to focus this time sort of on the household. So anything that's leaving your house, whether it's recycling or whether it's something that can't be recycled or whether it's organic, that's what we're focusing on here in this entire topic of E.8.1. Before we go into that, there's a couple ways we're going to talk about here. We're going to talk about landfills and incineration. And those are the two ways the IB wants you to know. But of course, we want to think about the future. And so when waste is coming from your home, a lot of it's going to get hopefully recycled, which will be in the next video. But also we want to start thinking about composting, because a lot of our waste is actually organic, which means it can be broken down and then can be reintroduced into soil, and then that can be used to further plant life and other life in the soil. So there is some other options there. But let's focus first on landfills. And landfills are what you saw in the video there. It's basically where you're putting the waste inside the land. So often you'll dig large pits, and they'll engineer them because those pits are going to be filled with all sorts of things. And eventually they start to leak and seep into the surrounding soil and eventually down into the water table. So if it's poorly designed, people that live around a landfill years later can develop health problems because their water and soil has been contaminated. So some advantages why these are built, especially in the developing countries, is that they are cheaper to build. They're basically, you just dig a hole and then you can start pushing things in there. Of course, it should be, if it's designed well, it will cost a little more money, but not as much as an incineration plant, which we'll look at next. We can actually capture the methane to produce energy from landfills. So as the organic waste is being broken down, a lot of methane is produced, and that methane can be captured, although it's very rarely done nowadays. It's just possible. Disadvantage is the smell. Living around a landfill, there's a lot of very, very putrid smells. It pollutes the soil and water unless you have very well designed it to make sure that nothing can leak through. So usually you create a barrier system underneath where you're putting your trash so that nothing can seep through. It is an eyesore. It's not good to look at. It's also a breeding ground for all sorts of pests like rats. And because it does emit a lot of these gases, it does contribute to the greenhouse effect. In terms of our second option, incineration. Incineration is basically high temperature combustion. So we're burning things. So if you remember, like with any of our combustion reactions, you're basically taking a fuel, reacting with oxygen, and then it's producing carbon dioxide and water. So our advantages here is that actually you end up reducing the volume of the trash quite considerably because you're burning it, it's being converted into gases, and then you're left with ash. So it's much smaller than what you started with. So you can actually, compared to landfills where it stays the same size. So the space volume saving there is an advantage. It is odor-free residue, overall. And so it wins out with the very smelly methane that you get from landfills. And it can be used as a source of energy because whenever you're burning something, you can actually then boil water and drive a generator to produce electricity. So incineration plants, although you put some energy in to start burning things, you also get energy produced because you can drive a turbine. Some disadvantages is that these are expensive to build upfront, and that these can also form dioxins. And you'll recall that that's one of our pollutants that is formed from combustion. It also adds to greenhouse effect in the form of CO2. So the greenhouse effect, two different reasons there. But this one definitely produces a lot more carbon dioxide because you're constantly burning. So those are the advantages and disadvantages of landfills and incineration. And really the ultimate goal should be to reduce the amount of waste at the source, which is usually our homes. So by buying less packaging, buying only what we need, repairing things, those types, reusing, free cycling, all those types of things, we can try and reduce our waste disposal.